They're wondering about if you take out your driver's license and if you got a little yellow star up on the right-hand corner, means you've already got your real ID in place. That's all you need to be able to go in and vote.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. That was Republican Senator Mike Rounds making the case for yellow stars on IDs. Where in history have we seen that before? I'm not calling Mike Rounds an anti-Semite, but at the very least, his comment betrays a deep ignorance of the historical significance of that symbol. For what it's worth, the real ID star on driver's licenses is not yellow. But the larger issue here is the demand by Republicans to pass federal legislation that would make it harder to vote because of specious claims of widespread election malfeasance. That kind of voter fraud isn't a thing that happens in America. We'll get into that in a minute. But the fear-mongering over this issue by Republicans works. And it works because Republicans have found a way to tie it to, you guessed it, immigration. Name just about any issue that they're losing on: cost of living, crime rates, voting rights. They will always try to find an immigrant to scapegoat. I asked Chris Goldsmith to join me to unpack all this. Chris is an Army vet and the founder of Vets Fighting Fascism. Here's our conversation. Chris, welcome to the show. It feels like we have jumped straight past show me your papers to yellow stars. And maybe this was a slip of the tongue. It probably was a slip of the tongue, but you don't say yellow stars on your documents unless it's in the back of your head.
This is building off of a decade of conspiracy theories promoted by Donald Trump and those around him. Back to the first election that he won, he believed that millions of undocumented immigrants voted illegally in California. Right. He put political capital into this. He hired Chris Kobach to do an investigation that, as far as I know, never actually happened. So because none of the conspiracy theory stuff has worked yet, they're trying to pass the SAVE Act, or the Save America Act, which would make it so that any woman who's been married and changed her name but hasn't updated her documents accordingly wouldn't be able to vote. Right. They are trying to disenfranchise as many people as they can. And I think that Mike Rounds having this yellow star idea in his head as he was trying to explain the rationale behind this bullshit is pretty telling. He understands that he's trying to classify Americans as real Americans, the ones who support him and his party, and those who are not real Americans. And that is not what you or I fought for when we raised our right hands.
You have that actual language now being offered by administration officials. Kristi Noem talked about making sure the right people vote for the right candidate.
When it gets to election day, that we've been proactive to make sure that we have the right people voting, electing the right leaders to lead this country.
The Secretary of Homeland Security threatening people's right to vote if they're not voting for the right candidate. These aren't just fringe figures. These are cabinet secretaries talking about making sure Americans vote for the right people.
The entire plan that Stephen Miller has for ICE is to use them as an intimidation force against voters from the primaries to the general election this year. They've been talking, Mike Flynn and Kash Patel, who, Kash Patel is now the FBI director. They've been talking about doing things like seizing ballots using the military. This is their QAnon fever dream that they've been stuck on for almost half a decade, or longer than half a decade now. So I think that Democrat-run states and states where people still care about democracy, as the Republicans in Georgia do and did when they stopped Trump from trying to steal the 2020 election, they need to start passing laws that makes it so that local law enforcement does not tolerate the things that happened in 2020, or does not tolerate ICE being, at or near polling stations under any circumstances. What I anticipate happening after the elections is Donald Trump will try to seize ballots, whether it's using the military or ICE, or calling in his friends, the Constitutional Sheriffs Association, or other unlawful militias. And that's what states need to start preparing for now. There needs to be laws passed that make it absolutely crystal clear that law enforcement must intervene.
Well, we don't need to anticipate Donald Trump seizing ballots. He just did it in Georgia at the Fulton County Elections Office. Granted, it wasn't during a recount. It was, at least the word inside D.C., it was an attempt to mollify or feed his conspiracy theories about 2020. But it also feels like it might have been a practice run. Seizing ballots using the intelligence services, the director of national intelligence herself was there. It doesn't seem to be entirely backward looking. It felt like a dry run.
Yeah, I think that you're right about that. This is the way that Donald Trump desensitizes people to his extreme behavior. Is he takes a step over the line, then takes a step over the line, and before you know it, the line that you originally drew is 10 miles back that way. And Donald Trump, using the FBI to go in to seize Fulton County ballots, it is going to make his audience expect and want this kind of, to demand this kind of thing happening. So, Director Tulsi Gabbard's involvement in this, I think, goes to show how integral to this administration and its top leadership these conspiracy theories are. Under no circumstance does the DNI go on an FBI raid. Like that is not something I think has ever happened before. The only reason that it happened is because this administration is running not to produce outcomes, but to produce content. They want to tell a story. They want to tell lies to keep their cult, frothing and wanting for real election interference.
It's Ken Harbaugh with a quick break to tell you about something new coming to the Midas Touch Network. Midas Defense, serious coverage of the military, national security, and real threats at home and abroad. No spin, no talking points, just expert voices and on-the-ground reporting. Check out Midas Defense, coming soon to the Midas Touch Network. We had a former covert CIA operative on the show week before last. I'll make sure to put the link in the show notes, but her damning indictment of the DNI's decision to go down to Georgia and just how unprecedented that was is a must watch. I think we'd be remiss, Chris, if we didn't point out that the underlying premise of all of this election paranoia and conspiracy theorizing is entirely manufactured. I've got this stat in front of me right here about the Heritage Foundation's own research into election fraud and its findings that in 24 years of voting, only 77 illegals voted, representing, I can't even do the decimal points, 0.0000764% of all votes. It's not a thing that happens. Utah, this is just off the top of my head, but Utah did its own assessment, I think, of the 2020 election, 2.1 million registered voters. They found one instance of a non-citizen who was registered and did not vote. Like, this is not a